All right, welcome everyone to another Brightspace session. My name's Lachlan Kalish. I'm the Learning Innovation Lead from DLT, seconded to the Brightspace project for PD, basically. I'm joined today by Kelly Boone from the project team. Kel will be helping to answer any questions, comments you might have in the chat. You're welcome to use the Q&A, which I have available for this session as well. And the intention behind the Lunch and Learn series is Monday, Wednesday, Friday, we have general drop-ins where people bring all manner of questions, and believe me, they have been all manner of questions around Brightspace. And Tuesdays and Thursdays are more focused. So the in-focus sessions are around, I guess, higher need areas or things that are on people's mind, obviously. And today's one, we're going to have a look at quizzes at the quiz tool in Brightspace together. Now, I'm willing to range over a fair kind of scope of whether that means setting up quizzes, submitting in quizzes, marking in quizzes, even things like the gradebook. I'll be guided a little bit by, I guess, some of your requests and questions, but I'm going to start talking about the quiz tool and its setup first, and then we will see where this one takes us. So I hope that sounds okay for those of you joining us. If not, by all means, make sure you put something in the chat saying, can you please show me this thing? And I will. All right, so first up, the base position that a lot of people are coming from is that they have had a master subject site migrated by the project team into Brightspace from an Interact 2 site, and included in that was a question library of quizzes, of quiz questions, I should say, and also the quizzes themselves. And when I say quiz, I'm going to use the term quiz instance. What I mean when I say quiz instance, if I jump into my quiz dashboard, these things are called a quiz instance, and they're basically the instructions on how the quiz is going to run. So it'll be things like the time period, the name of it, when it happens, how long they get, how many attempts they get, what does the feedback look like? And also, importantly, what questions do I want it to use? All of those things together form a quiz instance or the quiz instructions. The question library is a separate thing. It's basically a collection of folders with questions in it that we draw on for different purposes. Brightspace separates them out quite clearly at the top in our quiz dashboards between these two areas of manage quizzes, which shows us all the quiz instances, and the question library itself. And if we have a look at that library, what you'll end up getting is a series of folders. And inside those folders, if we expand them, you will end up getting the questions that sit inside the folder and the question types. The question types, by and large, are pretty much identical to what we had in Blackboard. There was a couple of exceptions, very, very edge case question types, but by and large, they're the same types of questions we get. So a lot of people had been going into question libraries and having a look and potentially viewing the questions, previewing them, editing them, adding new questions. What we needed to do in the master site was to set up, firstly, all of the quiz instances that we wanted for students to go into the 60 session, for example, that's about to start. And really, we just wanted those in place so that we had the right questions and the setup for the quiz ready and hopefully hidden. This is why it's important in our assessment dashboards in Brightspace that you're starting to get across what these icons are telling you has been done with these, because it can be a little bit problematic. The ribbon that we can see here, if I hover over the top of these items, tells me that this quiz has already been connected to the gradebook. Now, if you're seeing that inside your subject sites, it's a problem because we can't finalize our assessment setup until our subject outlines get published. So really what I'm hoping you see at the moment with your quiz is just the fact that it's hidden, really. If you have already joined it to the gradebook, it's not the end of the world, but it means that you're going to have extra columns sitting in there next week when your outline gets published. And then we're going to have to talk about how we clean that up. Anyway, What I might begin with here is the process of creating a new quiz. So we make sure everyone's across the settings that are involved, and what that looks like for students when they attempt to do one. So I'm going to create a new quiz here in this site. First thing it asks us to do is give a title for the quiz. And I've been recommending the same type of succinct format that we use with all of our assessment shells. If you can identify which assessment number it's going to be, that would be good. The name of the quiz and the cohort that it's intended for. That's a starting point. We don't need to worry about these options when we create a quiz shell. Points, whether or not it's in the gradebook, due dates. We don't touch any of those settings until the subject outline is published. At that point, we can finalize our assessment setup. Then we've got the description or our instructions for the quiz, if there are any. I'm not going to look at the questions just yet. I want to go through the configuration options on the right-hand side. Availability dates, this is the same setting we have available in the assignment tool. Start and end date areas refer to the visibility of the quiz itself. When can students see it? When can they see the link and start the quiz effectively? If you don't put anything in here, it's visible, it's available, and they can do it whenever. Obviously, due dates and things will impact on whether it shows as their attempt being late, but they will just be able to see the link to the quiz. If it's visible, now you've always got the option to keep your items, assessment items hidden, the hidden toggle down the bottom there. But you may want to consider putting in a start date in your session subject site once the outline is published. So if you want your students to start being able to do the quiz from week whatever to, then you go in and you end up putting in that date as a start date. And from that point on, they will be able to see the link to be able to do the quiz. So if I said I didn't want students to be able to start doing this quiz till Monday the 15th, it populates that time and it starts 1 minute past midnight that it's visible. The end date will remove the visibility of the object to the students. So that means it'll just disappear. There are, however, some caveats around what we can do with this. If I start populating an end date and I'm saying I only want that quiz, for example, to be available for 2 weeks, then I might say that past the 15th, I want it to disappear at the end of that second week, Friday, Sunday, whatever, it doesn't matter. And we'll see that I'm asked as well, do I want the availability dates to be in the calendar for the students? If it's in the calendar, it means they're going to get reminders about it. 2 days before we hit this date, the students will get an automatic email that says this quiz is going to be available in 2 days' time. Similarly, as we approach the end date, 2 days before that, they'll get an email that says this quiz will no longer be available after this date. So apart from it being visible to them in the calendar, they'll have it visible in their work to do item that sits on the student dashboard, and they'll also get reminder emails. So it's quite comprehensive in terms of them having that information about when things are happening. You're probably going to send announcements and other things, but the system will also help with that. If the item is in the calendar, arguably, I would say it's probably a good thing. Let me stop there for a second. Kel, I can see I've got a question going on.
Yeah, just a question from Susie. I think it's around, what do you do if you've already added the quiz to the gradebook? Do you change something? Change an option?
Yeah, so you've got 2 options. One of them is we unlink it and we delete the column that has been created as a result. The second option is you wait until the column comes from the subject outline next week and we can delete that. One or the other. You can't have them both just sitting in there. So I guess, Susie, you can decide which of those options is more appealing. But I guess moving forward, the idea is that we don't put anything into the gradebook until the subject outline gets published as a general rule. Moving forward, we want it so that we're only doing the linking once. All right, let's continue. Release conditions are the same settings that we have for content, communication, and assessment items. They're available to us underneath the availability dates and conditions area. And when I'm talking about release conditions, the one I'm most interested in is how do we restrict this item to a particular cohort of students? We do that by going in to add a release condition. In our session subject site, we need students in the site to be able to do this. I'm going to create a new one. And the type of condition I'm looking for is a class list condition. We want to look at who's enrolled and a section enrollment. Class list, section enrollment, and it will automatically detect which cohorts of students I have in my subject site. So here underneath, who's the quiz for? This one, I'm going to say Bathurst distance. Hit create, and now I can see this box clearly. On the right-hand side, this quiz will be restricted to Bathurst distance students, which probably tells me as well that my cohort information that I've got up here should probably read the same thing. All right, so I've set up parts of my quiz that I can. Waiting for the subject outline, obviously, is going to be the thing that allows me to do my linking and putting in my due date. What other settings have we got in place here? We don't need any more of the availability dates and conditions to finish the setup of our quiz. Let's look at timing and display. How long is the quiz going to run for? Time limit, so an hour, 30 minutes, whatever the case may be. By default, our quiz behavior in this tool is that once the student starts the quiz, the timer begins. When the time runs out, it automatically submits. That's how it works, unless you want to change those timer settings. And there are a few options in there that will, like for example, do you want the timer just to start at a particular date and time? To me, that sounds like an exam, which might be an option. When you get to a particular date and time period, the timer begins. But then we've got things like when it finishes, do we want to let them continue past the time? Do we not enforce the time? So, I mean, you may have scenarios where these are appealing, but by default, it's going to start as soon as the student starts the quiz, and it's going to submit when that time period finishes. Then we have a paging option. Do you want all of your questions together, or do you want one on each page? I'm going to go with one question per page, just for this example. Do you want to prevent backtracking? This was an option we had in Blackboard as well. It's up to you. Shuffling. Shuffling is a really interesting point with quizzes. It only has value if you are using the same set of questions for all students. All students will get the same 10 questions, but I'm going to change the order in which they get them. I think it's kind of been debunked a little bit in recent times, because we're saying that if the students have managed to share this elsewhere, then whether question 6 appears as question 1 or not is kind of irrelevant. It doesn't really protect the integrity of the task. The way that we get a little bit more security in this space is we use question pools, where we're drawing a random sample from a larger collection of questions. Shuffling the same set of questions, not really all that effective in my opinion. So I'd probably be moving past that one. Not really interested in allowing hints or disabling instant messaging or alerts or other things. Maybe you are. I'm going to finish with this section and move on to attempts and completion. How many attempts do the students get? 1, unlimited, 2, 3, 4, 10, etc. That's up to you. You can certainly change these. A lot of these settings are the same things that we dealt with in the test center in Blackboard. If you are using multiple attempts, how do you want it to calculate, that end result? These are fairly intuitive in terms of what the impact that they will have. This word category is an interesting one in our assessments. What it does is it creates a subheading on your dashboard to organize those items. So if I want all of my quizzes for Bathurst distance to be under a heading that says Bathurst distance, I could create a category called Bathurst distance. It's just a subheading. It's not connected to anything else. It just allows you to organize the items on either your assessment dashboard or your quiz dashboard. Lastly, we've got here a notification email. Unless you have a really good reason to get an email every time a student submits a quiz, maybe leave this blank. Then we have our evaluation and feedback settings. By default, what's going to happen with a quiz is if the question types are auto-marked, so think about multiple choice questions, etc., it will immediately publish the results upon completion. Student will be told straight away, you got 6 out of 10, for example. If you don't want that to happen, you need to uncheck the box. That's basically what you need to know about that. This would apply, I guess, in some ways with if you wanted a time period before all the students got their results, you'd need to uncheck this. If you wanted, obviously, if you had question types where the marker needs to provide feedback and a score, like a written response question in a quiz, for example, can't publish that until it's marked. So you need to think about the types of questions in your quizzes before you decide whether or not you want it auto-published. When we do publish, what are we giving back to the student? Do you want them to get a score or not? If you don't want them to get the score from the quiz, you better uncheck that box. Otherwise, they're going to get their score and what else? Correct questions, incorrect questions, all the answers, none of the answers. Again, these are the same types of options that we had to consider in Blackboard when we determined what type of feedback we provide to the students. For my example, what am I going to say? I only want to give them the ones they need that they got wrong, potentially. Do I want to give them the correct answers? Okay, why not? Incorrect questions with correct answers. There you go. You may have a very different take on how you want the feedback to go back to the students. Then we get customizing the quiz results displays. If this is not enough and you want to get into more detail around how the results will display to the students, you can add additional views. So these are the options I select before. I'm only showing them the incorrect ones with the correct answers, and it'll show their response as well. I can create additional views. So that's a primary view. There are secondary views, and I can determine the date at which those views come into play. So if you wanted to give the students some types of information before the actual final quiz result is published, and the scenario that we've worked through this session is things along the lines of, I'm happy for them to get the score for their multiple choice section of their quiz, but the open response, it needs to wait until it's been published. I can use 2 different views to determine that immediately they can get that score, and then afterwards they can get the published information. So I guess play around with some of those quiz results displays, or have a conversation with an ED around how you want your quiz to display if it's not simply about just giving them back the result immediately, would be my recommendation. Let me stop there. Kel, what have we got?
Yeah, Lucky, we've got a couple of questions, looks like to do with multiple cohorts.
Yep.
I think, Nicole, do you mean that you assigned it to Bathurst, but you needed to assign it to Port Macquarie?
Yeah, so just when you went into that section, I was just looking at my assessments because and when I did that, when I went to the edit assessment, the same as what you did, when I hit that add release condition, I only had Bathurst come up to Bathurst, whereas it was Wagga or Port Macquarie. Why would I only see Bathurst?
Did you choose create new or add existing?
Create new.
You sure?
Yeah.
Then that means that you only have students from those 2 cohorts enrolled in the subject at this stage.
Oh yeah, I do. Thank you. I'm an off session this one. Yeah, okay.
I see.
Sorry.
This is the whole learning by doing. I got it. Yeah, no, that's it. Perfect. Next one, Kel.
Yeah, Paul just wants to know, if you have multiple cohorts doing the same quiz, does it need to be set up multiple times?
Yes, is the short answer. Right now, we need to have, sorry, let me qualify that response, Paul. You need to set up the quiz once as a shell, then you can duplicate it as many times as you need to for the different cohorts. But we do need a quiz item for each of the cohorts.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
No problem. It's because next Monday, you're going to see all of the columns for all of the cohorts in your gradebook, and we have to tie the quiz to each of them. Yep. All right. So look, we've configured this quiz. I've done all of my setup for it. I'm only going to have to do this once if it's sitting in the master site. These same settings and this quiz will be pushed out every session, sitting there waiting for me in my session subject site. to use, finish setting up, etc., where I need to. What I haven't added at this point is the questions. So if I was creating a quiz from scratch, I would be looking at creating a new pool. And now I can tell Brightspace, let's give it a title first. Probably I want to be able to locate this easily. So if I call this assessment 1 question pool or something specific enough for me to actually find this again, maybe even a date. Just if that was the date, it's not actually the 3rd, but anyway. Then we get into, how do I want this to behave? I want to take a sampling of, let's say, 10 questions from a larger pool. I'm going to give 1 point per question at this point. I'll come back to this points business in a minute. And now I want to point to where in the question library I get the questions from. I've got 3 folders sitting in there. I could open each one and choose individual questions, but for today, I'm just going to choose all of them. So let's go with that one, and that one. How many questions has it given me in my libraries? It doesn't look like I have a great deal, does it? At the moment, there's only 5 questions in my entire library. Well, I better make the pool a bit smaller than that. So I will take a random selection of 3 out of the whole 5 that sit within my pools. It will show me a preview over on the right-hand side of what they look like. Also underneath, I can see each of those questions. The question type. It'll also tell me if it's utilized somewhere else, but I can actually open up each of those individual questions and modify them if I need to as well. If I hit cancel there, I'm happy with the pool as it is, so I'm going to hit save. And there's my pool sitting underneath. Right, so at the moment, my whopping 3 questions, giving me a total of 3 points for the whole quiz. And you'll notice that appears automatically up here in the grade section. Don't be put off by this. You can change the actual grade value of the quiz up here if you need to, once we start linking to the grade book. At the moment, I can't click on anything, but once you link it to a column in the grade book, you will be able to adjust the value, and that will convert the student's attempt, no matter how many points it's out of in the quiz, to the actual task weighting. If it's 1-to-1. What I mean by 1-to-1 is 1 item in your subject outline for quiz 1, and our 1 quiz instance that we're looking at here, then I can just change that value and it will convert the student score into the task weighting value. That's the first thing that I'll say there. So I've made my quiz shell in this instance. I'm going to hit save and close. This is where naming conventions are important, and you can see I've made many quizzes at different points. Let's say that was an example. Some of them have even had student submissions. What I might do at this point in time is actually make one of these visible, and I'll do it as a student so we can see what it looks like. This was the one that I just made, name of the quiz. So let's make it visible. I'm going to go in to a quiz as a student. So let me find, actually, I'll show you a better option because you guys don't get access to impersonate. Going back into my quiz dashboard, if I'm looking at a quiz and I want to see how it behaves for students, I have the option of previewing the quiz. Once I go to preview, it will run through that quiz as a student would. This is the information they see, however, and I can hit start quiz to begin. So it shows the instructions, hit start quiz, and then it will run through what the quiz is going to look like to students. You'll notice that they get all of these are displayed on the one page for this option. Time is going on up here. I can hide it if it's freaking me out for whatever reason. I can also jump between different pages in the quiz. Interestingly enough. So if you have separated your quiz so that they are displaying on different pages, you can use these tiles to jump between different sections. In this case, I'm going to go, yep. Saved my responses. I'm going to submit the quiz. Then it gives me this declaration business. Yep, it's definitely me. if you're looking at a preview and you want it to be graded in the grade quiz area, that's up to you, I suppose, with the preview, but I don't need to do that. I'm going to hit submit quiz. All right, and at that point, it gives me, because it's auto marking and giving me my score, I got 2 out of 3, 66.67%. And if I had changed the weighting for this quiz, it would convert that score to the task weighting in my grades. So that is the quiz experience for students, what it looks like. You can access that at any time yourself. I'm going to exit my preview at this point. From your quiz dashboard by hitting the drop down and going to preview. All right, I'll stop there. Kel, have I got other questions?
Yes, Beck's just asking about paired subjects. Can you set up a quiz in one subject and then reuse it in the paired subject site?
You can. You'd need to copy the quiz from one to the other. The best way to do that, Beck, is to actually go into the destination. I'm assuming you have access to both subject sites. You go into the destination site, then you go into your subject admin area and use the import, export, copy option. We want to copy stuff from another Brightspace subject. So copy components from another org unit just means get stuff from somewhere else. Search for the subject that you want to get the other quiz from. So if I wanted to get something from Med 111, for example, they've got something in this site that I want. I'm going to add that site. Then it asks me, do I want to copy everything from there or just individual components? I'm going to choose this option. Yep, I definitely want something from there. Then it shows me the whole list of objects inside that site. Is it content? No, it's not. We want to go down, down, down. It's not an assignment. It is quizzes, right? At that point, I can either copy my entire quiz library and question library across, or you can drill down. I'm going to take quizzes at this point, but I'm not going to get all my quizzes. I'm going to drill down and select an individual quiz. And I can continue. And it shows me that they've organized their quizzes into different sections. My goodness, there are a lot of quizzes in medicine. Anyway, I'm going to take this quiz, number 7. It will now give me that quiz, 1 out of 32 quizzes. Don't worry about offset dates. It's irrelevant. Hit finish. It's copying it. This process is really quick. And I'll be able to find that quiz in my quiz dashboard the moment this finishes. Pardon me. It will just take a moment. Now it's done. I can go into my quiz dashboard and now find, let's find it in here, Population Health Module 7 quiz. There it is, sitting there. It's hidden at the moment, but I can now use this in my new subject site. All right, I can see we've got a few more questions. Jackie, I'll start with yours. Should question libraries be duplicated between shared subjects? I would argue yes. I think it's good to have them there. If you just copy a quiz like I did, it will work for the students because it includes the questions, but none of the rest of the question library is there. So if you'd created a pool as part of setting up the quiz, it will be copied across, but the entire question library is not going to be there available for someone in that second site unless you've copied it across. So I would be copying it as well. I don't see any harm in doing that at all. Other questions, Kel?
Yes, just that relevant to Paul as well. He's asking about how would you import a pool of questions from the question library?
Importing a pool of questions from the question library. Paul, which question library are we talking about?
So I've got the question library that got copied over from Interact.
Yep.
And it's, as you said the other day, it's just files sitting in folders, etc., etc.
Yeah.
Now I want to use those to create a proper quiz, and I want one question that the students see is going to be one pool. So it's one question is going to be selected from, say, a pool of 10.
Yep.
But I want to use those ones that are sitting in the question library.
Okay. So are you able to go through your question library and find the questions that you need now? Like, have you adjusted it? Yeah, you can. Good. Yep. So in that case, when you're creating the quiz, And you start by creating the pool, whether it's one pool or multiple pools, right? So let's say I want to create a new question pool in here, and I'm saying that for this one, I want to take one question, and I'll give it 1 point, and then I want it to draw just from this folder, for example.
Yep.
At that point, it creates my first pool that sits here.
Yep.
I can now create others.
Yep.
Underneath, if I like.
Okay.
If I was going to call that part 2, you repeat the process. One question worth 1 from a different set of folders, for example. There's no content in this one, but anyway, it's easier when you have a bunch of questions in your site, I would say.
Yep.
I'll just replicate the process. So it's going to take that from those 5. That'll do. So I've got, I think because I've already used them in the first section, it doesn't like me doing this, but anyway. Yeah, I've already, see how it says already imported. So it won't let me do it, refer to the same questions twice in the same quiz. That's why it's preventing that process. But anyway, you create multiple pools. And in fact, a lot of people that have subject site content migrated will see all those multiple pools sitting there waiting for them in their quiz instance. So if I pick on, it doesn't really matter. Let's pick on these guys. We'll have a look in BMS and have a look at their quiz instance dashboard in their question library. I think he's deleted them all. Maybe. Pick a different subject site. Do you want to give me a subject site, Paul?
CHM 107.
Okay. So in the session site, I'm assuming?
Yep. I probably would do it in the master site, but I don't think it matters, does it?
Well, not for me demonstrating. You can copy them backwards and forwards using that process that I showed you a minute ago.
Yeah.
If I look at quizzes and exams, yeah, right. So all of these got copied, I'm assuming, from Interact 2.
They
And
did.
if we have a look at those and scroll down, oh, there's no pools in. Oh, here we go. So this one only has the one pool, but I've certainly seen some quizzes where there are just long collections of question pools copied across.
Yep. Yep. If you go back, just go into my question library if you wouldn't mind.
Sure.
So you can see on, I think those folders are groups of pooled questions. So
let's have a look.
Yeah.
Yeah, so they've got subfolders in them, for example, that have other collections of stuff.
Yep. So
if I go into those, they then have the actual collection of questions.
So at that level, that folder is what I'd call question 1 in that quiz.
Yeah, perfect.
Okay, so I just copy that. I go to that level and pull that across.
Yeah, so absolutely, and you would select that box, for example, when you're browsing in the create the pool, browse for the questions in the question library that you want, and then you select the box. I'll go through the process. If we hit done editing questions, if I was to create a new quiz in here and create a new pool, and I said I wanted to get whatever 5 from here and give however, I think I noticed you were giving 0.2 or something like that, but however many points you're going to add, keeping in mind that it will convert whatever this value is to the task weighting. Browse the library. We go through those folders. As we said, if I open this up, it will show me the subfolders. So if that was the one that we were looking at, for example, if I hit that box, it's taking 9. Yep.
That's what I'd want to pull across.
Yep.
And call that question 1 in my quiz. Yep. And I'd only want one of those from that pool.
Oh yeah, perfect. Okay. Yep. So at that point you'd be as you said. Yeah. So
that actually becomes question 1 in the quiz.
I would be interested when you have a look at the preview how it appears in terms of the naming of the question item. If it's the first item in your list, it's always going to be called question 1. So is it going to say question one? Or, I mean, it's a small thing, but just see how it looks in the preview.
All right.
And then adjust the pool title appropriately.
Sure. Thank you.
No worries. All right. I am aware we are past time. I'm happy to hang around for questions for another 5 or 10, but for those of you that need to run, etc., by all means, feel free to do so. I will stop the recording there, however.